zurück zu einer weiteren Folge Witch on the Holy Night. So, beim letzten Mal haben wir ja die Schwester von Aoko kennengelernt. Und Aoko und Alice sind sich ziemlich sicher, dass ihre Schwester hinter den Angriffen auf die beiden steckt. Die Schwester von Aoko ist gerade aber im Quarantine Estate und hat sich mit Soichiro unterhalten und mal sehen, was daraus jetzt wird aus dem Spaß. A short time ago at the Quarantine Estate, the videotape finished playing. The VCR had automatically stopped playback, foregoing the need to hit the stop button to avoid the static storm. What remained on screen was a reflection of Soichiro and Toko, Aozaki, sitting opposite each other in conversation.
秘密を知られたから先生なしの直接攻撃ね。怪獣作を考えもしないのは青子らしいけど。
Warte mal, hat Soichiro gerade ihr davon erzählt? It was hard to tell if she was being patronizing or indifferent. Toko Aozaki took a sip from her cup as she listened to Soichiro's story. She would have savored the anecdote about the amusement park kerfuffle, were it not for the poor excuse for a cup of tea in her hands.
ありがとう。参考になったわ。ここしばらく青子とは顔を合わせていなかったから、あの子がどんな風に成長したかなんて想像するしかなかったし。それと、一応肉親として謝っておかないとね。災難に付き合わせて悪かったわ、宗十郎くん。ほんと、あの子ったら昔から迷いってものがなかったから。
なさすぎると思います。
Soichiro was enjoying the conversation despite having to relive those events. About an hour passed by while the two of them sat in conversation, neither short on topics to discuss. Aoko was an easy topic for both of them, so the conversation centered mostly around her.
ところで、さっきから気になってることがあるんだけど、聞いていいかな？
While she kept her posture dignified, Toko's eyes shone with eager curiosity. Her elegance caused Soichiro's heart to beat a little faster.
気になってることです。
Despite his caution, he found himself speaking politely. She smiled affectionately, as if she found him pleasing.
ええ、一度目はダッシュで逃げられて驚いたけど、今日は違った意味で驚かされた。ね、そういうのが若い子たちの流行りなの？
Oh, ich weiß, was jetzt kommt. Aoko hat ihm doch den Halskrause, nenne ich sie jetzt einfach mal, den... Ah, verdammt, ich weiß... Also, ich komme die ganze Zeit auf Gürtel, aber... sorry, mir fällt der deutsche Name nicht mehr dafür ein. Egal.
Hoi?
Toko had her eyes fixed on collar that Aoko had snugly secured around his neck.
新手のチョーカー？でもどこから見ても。
The bespectacled woman made a show of holding her tongue. On a completely unrelated note, in another decade, similar accessories would become a standard part of any visual kei artist's wardrobe.
まさか、どこから見ても首輪ですよ、犬用の。
やっぱり？けど、その首はすごく可愛いわ。よく似合ってるけど、自分でつけたの？
Toko stared intently, examining the strap. While he had never been very conscious of the collar till now, for some reason Soichiro found himself blushing.
はい、つけたのは自分ですけど。
By
そうじゃ
myself.
なくて、誰からもらったの？青子？それともクオンジさん？
くれたのは青子ですね。
Toko nodded in satisfaction at Soichiro's candid response.
つまり、君は青子の持ち物なわけか。
She coldly muttered. With this, the cordial atmosphere began to turn. Soichiro nodded naturally, oblivious to the edge in her words.
何でも所有されてるそうです。
The blunt observation made Toko burst out laughing. Apparently Toko was the quirky type of person to laugh when least appropriate. As her laugh tapered off into a giggle, she picked up her now empty teacup.
じゃあこれも青子のでしょ。青っていう名前にコンプレックスがあるくせに青いものが割と好きだから。
そうですけど、おかわりしますか？二人ともまだ帰ってきそうにありませんから。
いいえ、そろそろ帰ってくる頃よ。
Soju nodded along headlessly. Finally, the strangeness of her phrasing damped on him, and he tilted his head in confusion.
トウコさん？
Toko sighed once.
ごめんね、宗十郎くん。メガネ外してもいいかしら。
He wondered why she would need to ask his permission, but nodded anyway.
それじゃあお言葉に甘えて。
Ich habe
もう
irgendwie
少し
Spaß
ぐらい
gefühlt.
は君の反応を見ていたかったけど。
Toko touched the temples of her glass. If one were to look closely enough, one might have noticed the scars on her slender fingers. They were small, fine scars, from years of repeated cuts. Before her fingers even left the eyeglass frames, the spectacles crumbled. It happened so fast that Shotsu barely resisted it. The frame cracked into pieces, sliding down her face and into her lap.
やるもんだ。30体を一瞬とはね。
Okay, the low voice belonged to someone entirely different. All she had done was take off her glasses, but her elegant grace had completely faded. Any semblance of warmth and kindness had disappeared. Sitting upon the sofa was a deplorable mage, her very presence darkening the room. Cedric sat speechless. Across from him was a completely changed Toko, glaring back at him menacingly. More malice and magical energy was now emanating from Toko than when Naoka tried to kill Sojiro. She seemed titillated at the prospect of the boy's shock at her transformation. Such expectations were often left unfulfilled when it came to Sojiro.
メガネ壊れましたね。
Sojiro blurted out in surprise. Her hand stopped as she reached for a cigarette, then the wind taking out of her sails.
もったいない。大丈夫ですかそれ？
いや、そんなものはいいんだ。多少視力が落ちたところで大ごとにはならないし。そもそも私がある限り、五感による情報にすら主観が入る。すべてこの世は霧の中だ。もともと目に見えるだけのものは信じていないたちでね。
Ich möchte kurz mal anmerken, dass ich das nicht gut finde, dass sie in so einem Raum mit einem Teppich und solchen Möbeln raucht. Das finde ich sehr suboptimal. Her speech taken on a clinical tone. This too did not seem to shake Sojiro.
そうですか。それでさっきの言葉の意味ですけど。
Sojiro began forming another question unflinchingly. Toko scowled as she had found a bug in her food. After some consideration, she came to the conclusion she needed to be blunt with the boy. By some twist of fate, it was a headache she now unknowingly shared with her sister.
意味も何もない。青子たちの帰り道に多少の障害を置いただけだ。君は青子の持ち物だと言ったな。ならことさら丁寧に教えてやる必要もない。告白してしまうとね、宗十郎君。私が君たちの敵なんだ。
Though he understood her words, the clock's second hand would rotate fully twice over before anyone next spoke. They sat across from each other, eyes locked. Cedric's shoulders tightened nervously. He had finally understood the true danger of the situation.
驚いた。
Toko asked with a grin. She was still the same woman, but without her glasses, Toko's smile was rather sinister.
あなたは青崎の姉なのに。
A smile pierced him as he asked the obvious. Toko was no longer surprised that Cedric would be more concerned about the safety of others than his own. In just one short hour, she had come to understand Sojo Shizuki better than he knew himself.
逆だよ。姉だから敵なんだ。私には青子からあらゆる権利を奪う義務がある。物質的なものも精神的なものも その全てを踏みにじらなければ気が済まない。尺度として言うなら、もし青子がこの町に頼っていたのなら、まず町から壊していたぐらい。けど君のことは予想外だった。
Toko eyes closed felt sorrow. Behind her trapped expression there was a silent conflict.
世の平等に起こるべきか、偶然の出会いとやらに嘆くべきか。これも抑止力というやつかな。無垢な部外者を手にかけるのは世の常だが、この手合いにあったのは初めてだ。いや、そもそもいるなどと考えたことすらなかったな。
Toko sighed at the ceiling and stirred in her seat. She seemed to have overcome an unexpected moment of uncertainty.
君は青子の切り札には見えない。排除しておくまでもない善良かつ無能な部外者だ。だから放っておきたいのだけど、私の六感がこう告げているんだ。
More plainly put, she made up her mind to kill him. Though Sojo was somewhat flattered at how grossly she inflated his importance, he was struck more by the karmic irony. Toko had arrived at the same conclusion as her sister. However, this was no time for idle thought, so he readied himself to stand up from the sofa in such a way as to not draw attention to the plan so clearly written all over his face, to make a run for it.
バカ者。こういう時は半端に動くな。逃げるならさっさと逃げる。交渉するならテコでも動くな。なんというか、そんな風に動かれると、その気がなくともつい反応してしまうだろう。
殺さないんですか？
今のところはね。私は君が気に入ったし。いや、違うな。正しくはこう。私ぐらいしか君を救ってあげられないのかも。
はい。
She looked the perplexed Sojo straight in the eyes. Though actually brown, her eyes gleamed a piercing red, like the edge of a blade. Oh. It was at this moment an overwhelming sense of dizziness overcame Sojo. His mind went numb, like he couldn't tell who he was. It was like drifting into a sinister sleep from which he had never awake. Sojo clenched his jaw desperately to maintain consciousness. Toko's eyes devoured him like a bottomless pit of quicksand. In that moment it all became clear to him. It no longer mattered that she was Aoko's sister, or that she was Alice's sworn enemy. Toko Asaki's deadly battle with the girls had become his battle. Which is why, when you find yourself feeling a special spark for a stranger mere moments ago, that feeling is not to be trusted. You may simply be attempting to fill a void shaped like yourself, with more emptiness. Jojo tried to drag his body away from this heretofore an unencountered sense of danger, but found that it would not respond. Toko tilted her head forward at him, eyes fixated on him.
君の思う通り、私は君と似たところがある。それとも君が私に近いのかな。何？食べ物の好き嫌い程度の類似だが、軽視することでもない。問題は、君が私より偏っているということでね。
Biased. She clearly used a different definition of the words than the one Sojo knew. Biased. It meant that he was alone, that he was an outsider who didn't belong in this town. A sudden and seething anger eclipsed his gentle heart.
俺、一人じゃないですけど。
Jojo stood back with all the enmity he could muster, as he faced this witch named Toko Asaki. If he had not, he feared he would never escape her gaze.
だろうな。だからこそ君は偏っているんだ。早くそれに気づきなさい。一番手っ取り早い解決は、それでいいんだと認めることだ。人間なんてたくましいもんでね。別に何もかも放り投げてもうまくいくものなのさ。けれど、青子にはそれは許せない。あれは他人であれ、あらゆることを許さない人間だからな。
Toko leaned over the table. She reached out Yotsuyo's collar and roughly pulled him to water.
いや、そんなことはいいんだ。 ただ純粋に私は君が欲しいと思った。自分の認識が不明で自分自身が不能と感じる。未来というものがとても自分に関わりのあることとは思えない。となれば必然心情は過去への逆行を試みる。しかし所詮ソアの前のモアのように正常な流れの前には時間旅行は押し戻されてしまう。それも私にあって君にあるものだ。ああ、なんて無様な私、なんて哀れな。
Toko trailed off mid-sentence. As she pulled Soju closer, her own eyes reflected in his, she noticed a merciful expression on her face. Soju got to thinking. He had no hostility towards this woman. He bore her no grudge, harbored no desire to kill her. He was aware only of his anger and aimless compassion. He wished that he could give her the answers she wanted, but...
あなたの言っていることはよくわからない。
Soju replied apologetically, a verbal reply to the visible question he perceived in her eyes. Toko showed no signs of disappointment. Instead, the corners of her lips turned upward in delight.
そうか。君には言葉の暗示は通じないんだな。意味深なセリフ回しで丸飲みにしてやろうとも思ったが、いや失敗。小綺麗な建前は逆効果だった。君にはむき出しの原始的な語りの方が良かったんだな。いいよ。ますます気に入った。
Her finger stuck into his throat as if she were tearing at the leather. Perhaps he could be hers if only she could rip it off.
少年、青子なぞより私のもとに来い。使い道はないが保護ぐらいはしてやろう。手が空いた時なら気晴らしに愛してやってもいい。
It had taken many approaches, but she seemed to have decided on this one. The length to which she went to seduce him were not lost on Soju, and truth be told, they were not wholly unwelcome. But back to the matter at hand.
それはお断りします。
Soju chose the direct response as he did.
なぜ？
だってあなたのためにならない。
He had confidence in that at least. Toko's overestimation of him aside, Soju knew for a fact that he had to escape this woman's clutches. This tete a tete could only be concluded by one of its two participants, Toko or the individual she was currently infatuated with. On a hunch, the boy mustered all the conviction he could find. She gently removed her hand from his collar and jabbed him in the chest, causing him to tumble back onto the sofa.
そうか。なら仕方がない。君も青子の大切な持ち物として考えることにしよう。
The scarred red mage quietly stood up.
青子が帰ってくる頃だから私は行くよ。青子では私には勝てないとだけ伝えておいてくれればいい。
それはいいんですけど。
Before she left the room, Toko paused to let Soju continue. Like a student humbly inquiring of a teacher, Soju pointed to the object in Toko's hand and asked,
そのカップどうするんです？
Surprised, she looked down at the teacup in her right hand that she had forgotten she was holding. She hadn't even realized that she had been holding the cup the entire time.
これ？せっかくだからもらっていく。
The act of taking something without the owner's permission is commonly referred to as theft. However, this was more likely in the typical relationship between Naoko and Toko, share and share alike, and so forth. Shoji nodded to show that he understood. Unsure of his nod was sincere or not, Toko smiled the gleeful grin for the second time since taking her glasses off.
やはり変わり種だね、君は。逸材かどうかは別の話だが。
For just a moment she had returned to the affable Toko Aozaki he met before the glasses came off. Leaving him with the image of her smile, she departed the mansion. Her broken glasses remained on the drawing room table. No sooner had the eerie visitors left did Aoko and Alice return home. Despite Aoko's sure mood, she seemed as merry as ever. Despite everything that had happened and their trip having its fair share of problems, she still had fun. Whereas Alice was her usual stoic self. A manner not unlike a parent following behind a rampaging toddler cleaning up their mess. The scene of their return was like something out of a TV sitcom, and lost in thought, so she forgot to greet them.
宗十郎、留守中何かあった？
Aoko asked me more so out of etiquette than courtesy while removing her coat. Without answering, he stood up from the sofa.
そりゃ半日分の出来事はあったけど、それより寒かっただろう。お茶を入れようか？
ああ、お願い。こっちも一から作戦練り上げようってとこだから。
Georgia was on his way to the kitchen to prepare tea even before Aoko had finished her upbeat response. Wait a minute, something... He was following his same tea brewing routine as always, but somehow something did not feel the same. As though in a trance, Sochi returned to the drawing room where they were sitting down and placed the tea on the table.
これからどうするつもりなの？アオコ。とりあえず足で探すしかないわね。あいつ相手に守りに入るのは良くない。こっちが城壁を作ってる間に一個師団の人形をこさえかねないわ。
So they conversed with each other while ignoring Sochi's parents. Upon hearing what they said, he stood up and spoke abruptly.
探すって、トウコさんを？
それ以外誰を探すって？ちょっと、あんた、今なんて言ったの？
Yep.
トウコさんなんだろ、青崎たちの敵は。さっきまでここにいたよ。
He answered so casually, Aoko standing there dumbfounded. Alice stood up from the sofa and went to where the two of them were standing. Her typical kind and somber features turned reproachable.
しずきくん、その人、何かしていった？
お茶を飲んで、メガネを外して、あれ、よく思い出せないな。
What was once a clear memory seemed to have been scrubbed clean from his mind. Jutsu was overcome by the same dizziness he had felt earlier. A sharp, dry smack echoed through the room. What snapped him out of his haze was an unexpected slap from Alice.
二度は言わないわ。他人を私の家に立ち入らせないで。
Deep within her eyes, beyond the normal cool indifference, was an intense fury. Realizing, however, that it was no ordinary anger, Suchu understood how careless he had been.
すまない。アリスにとってここが大事な場所なのは分かってたのに。
A heavy silence followed. Both Suchu and Alice stood there, chained to the spot by their own regret. Aoko looked on in amazement, wondering if they would stay this way all night if left alone.
あのね、姉貴を通した宗十郎も悪いけど、言ってなかったアリスも悪いでしょ。子供じゃないんだから、いつまでも反省してないで、もっと前向きに話をしない？
Alice hung her head and sat back down at Aoko's insistence. Suchu stood where he was, nursing his stinging right cheek. Pain was pain, but he knew how to take a knock. More to the point, the crisp strike from Alice snapped him out of his fog, jogging his memory.
思い出した。青子じゃ私には勝てないって伝えておいてほしいって。
大した自信ね。他には？
他は基本的に世間話だったというか、あ、ソアとかモアとかよくわからないことを口にしてたな。
Considering the small talk was mostly about Aoko and the floor, Suchu could say it would be better to take that part out to his grave.
あの人、インドにでも行ってたのかしら。ところで宗十郎、あんた、姉貴に何かされたわね。
Aoko turned to him, glaring sharply. He had nothing to be ashamed of, but he looked away guiltily.
何かって何さ？
思い出せないとか言ってたでしょ。さっきまでの態度もふわふわしてたし。そうか、メガネを外したまでは覚えてたってことは魔眼にでも見入られたか。
As quickly as she had jumped to that conclusion, Aoko went quiet again, as if the information was of little importance. But it was not enough to detract Suchu from bringing it up again.
青崎、魔眼ってなんだ？
魔力を帯びた目のことよ。簡単なものは一時的な混乱を、 上級なものは睨んだだけで相手を殺すとかね。バロールみたいな魔眼の持ち主なんて伝説だけだろうし、そもそもそんな魔眼持ちが生まれてくるなら私たちの悩みもあっさり終わるってものだけど。
Without further context, Oko knew her explanation was completely lost on Sojo.
そうね。わかりやすく言うと、私の魔眼みたいなのを目から照射するようなもんよ。
目から青崎か。
Oh, scheiße. Sojo's confusion deepened along with Oko's frustration.
だからあなた一度目を閉じた後のトウコの目を見たんでしょ。その一瞬で姉貴の魔眼に捕まったってこと。目を猫名詞に入れ替える魔術師もいるけど、姉貴はそんなことする必要はないから。あの人生まれながらの魔眼持ちだしね。さしたる準備も栄唱もなしでシャッターするだけで切り替え自由なの。
Sojo pointed his fist in understanding. Now he thought about it, he vaguely remembered her doing something exactly like that. Everything after was foggy and muddy, and her mystic eyes seemed the only logical cause.
その話は分かったけど、瞳子さんは青崎のお姉さんなんだろう。なんで姉妹で殺し合いをしてるんだ。
He knew it was not something he should ask, but he did it anyway. The question was against the rules. He had no business being involved in this dispute. Oko closed her eyes to collect her thoughts. She decided it was best for all involved to at least share some background information, if only to head off further
いい
questions.
わ、話してあげる。姉貴に関わった以上事情を説明しておかないと危ないし。けどなんであれ聞き返すのはなしね。この件に関しては私は私の事情を話すだけだから。
He stared down Sojo until he nodded slowly in recognition. Knowing him, she knew this was confirmation enough. The conversation was becoming oddly friendly again, but Oko sat up a little straighter as she prepared to tell the tale.
姉貴の話をするってことは、私と青崎の家の話と、何より魔術と魔法の話をしないといけない。少し遠回りになるし、多言無用な内容だけど、いずれあんたの記憶は消えるから問題ないってことで。
Oko made sure to add that disclaimer as a condition for telling him the information in the first place. Yay, Disclaimer, aber ganz wichtig.
魔術っていうのはね、宗十郎。いわば共通のルールなのよ。
Also ich würde sagen, an dem Punkt beende ich jetzt aber hier einfach mal diese Folge. Das passt nämlich gerade ganz gut, dann machen wir da beim nächsten Mal weiter. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und ja, bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.